Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 3 of the Spartan Training Ground. I'm Robert Wilson, along with the prodigy himself, Andrew Taylor. Andrew, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. How about you?
Good, good. We took a little break for the holiday, just to kind of get through family stuff, get through work, but now we're back. PAX is behind us. All of the regionals have been completed, and we're looking towards now.
Can't wait for Nats.
Yeah, so some of the it's since it's been a little bit since we've recorded. For anyone that hasn't heard, and I'm sure everyone has at this point, LRG announced that Nationals will be in Columbus, Ohio.
Woohoo!
They took my advice and are putting Doug to work as best as they can. So thank you to Heroes and Games and Lazarus Risings for getting that out and making it happen.
Yeah, I think they listened to our show because that was our last suggestion at the end of episode 2, wasn't it?
Yeah, Joe has clearly been waiting for us to record for a couple weeks. He will be ecstatic.
That's right. What a guy.
But yeah, I figured tonight we'll kind of recap PAX and your experience. You were there, kind of talk about where we think the meta is, and kind of going into nationals, like what strategies, what decks do we think kind of maybe good for this expected meta. And Doug kind of talked about his playtesting experience. We'll kind of talk about that and share some of our thoughts. And then for some number of people, this will be their first Nats experience, or their first real large event for some of the new players and some of the players that will be playing the last chance qualifier. So just kind of some deck building advice and kind of ways we can help them prepare and kind of really get them in a position to make the best run possible for Nats. And I definitely think you could see a player come out of nowhere with some fresh ideas, and hopefully we can kind of help support them.
Yeah, totally agree. I have a new buddy who has been toying with the game. His twin brother's way more into it, who actually went with us to PAX. But the other brother, he was considering coming, and he almost did. He almost pulled the trigger, and he just wasn't sure how many people are going to be at the last chance qualifier, and it would kind of be a bummer to fly out all the way there and then not make it and not be able to play in the Nats. But you never know. There might only be like 8, 10, 12, and you got pretty good odds to get in there.
Yeah, taking Doug at his word for what LRG kind of relayed to him about the last chance qualifiers. I believe he said 8. They're looking to take 8 players from the last chance qualifiers, which
Hmm.
I think if you show up, you have pretty good odds.
I think so too. Maybe I can twist his arm and get him to do it because that would just be so awesome.
I mean, they've published the list a couple times, and I struggle to name people playing Overpower that aren't on that list.
Right?
So I think, yeah, I mean,
Pretty inclusive.
there's probably a couple people that I'm just kind of not thinking of. I think if you show up to the last chance qualifier, your odds are pretty good at getting in. I mean, I think that's by design. I think they want people in, they want people participating. I think, season 0, they really want to kind of get people. I think this is a good way to do it.
Yeah. No, totally agree. I mean, it's worth putting the fight up. Like we've had brand new players that in, 16, 24 person tournaments that have gone like second. And we've had, on the flip side, we've had amazing players that lose a few games in a row. It's definitely anybody's fight. You bring a solid deck and variance goes your way a little bit, and it's anybody's game. So highly encourage all the new players to give it a shot. At the very least, it's a lot of fun and a learning experience, but you just may surprise yourself and others.
I mean, let me, I guess, be a kind of one of those examples. I mean, I showed up to the Dallas NAOL Western Shootout event. No one knew who I was, and I went third.
Hell yeah.
I took third and lost to Doug, and he was the eventual winner. So you can come out and spike an event. I mean, if you have a good idea and you have a good handle on the meta, and you play solid, good, largely mistake-free Overpower, you can win.
Absolutely. Who'd you bring that first tourney? I'm curious.
So I brought Hercules. To me, he kind of seemed like the new Spawn,
Yep.
except I could use the team defense offensively. And then Heroes for Hire, Beast the Brute, and then Spider Woman. Just kind of like looking at the energy meta I was like,
Hmm.
well, someone else is going to bring this team, and I want a way to attack the energy meta. Like I just kind of went through the previous year's NAOL, and I was like, well, here are the list of characters played. Here are the most, and it was clearly across the board, easily energy.
Yep.
So I wanted an offense. I had an offensive team, and then I wanted a defensive battle site. So I chose the Outback.
Love the Outback.
A lot of people do Pretty Boy as their one per deck. And
You did Absorb Sound.
I went with Absorb Sound. To
Yep.
me, Pretty Boy won't win you a game. It'll stop you from losing. Absorb Sound will win you a match.
Right.
And then it happened to me a couple of times. Like I just blew a few people out of the water with Absorb Sound, and they were like, "What happened here?" I mean, it was
Hmm.
yeah. And looking at it, and I even like I anticipated playing against strength decks because that was like the second most popular thing. So I used Asclepion, and then I had a couple cards to remove hits in the battle site itself, like from Wolverine's Heal, and then the Sentinels remove a strength icon. And then
Ah,
I had one, then Master Mold can do it too.
right.
So I had a couple ways to trigger in addition to the negates already in the deck. So you could, even if you just hit it once or twice a match, sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's
absolutely agree. If you're
kind of
doing like 3 or 4 times, it's amazing, but you really only need one or two to get value out of it.
yeah.
So I think people think when they build their decks, like their Baker Street deck or their Asclepion deck, like, oh my, it needs to be totally tailored. I need every character to have synergy with this. Like, you really don't. You just need a couple of triggers off of it. It's just an enhancement for the team.
And we can kind of talk about this, when we're talking about deck building advice. Like you can just see there, I walked through, like I had a plan. Like I looked at the meta, I saw what was prevalent. I said, here is my way to attack it. And then I built a deck kind of for that purpose. So, that's kind of the approach I would take. And even kind of as we kind of tackle kind of the meta, we can kind of get into that. But, tell us about Philly. I mean, what were your thoughts and your experience? And then, we can kind of talk about some of the top performing decks.
Yeah, so it was a lot. Having it inside PAX, the con itself, was pretty crazy. I think the whole intent was there would be a lot of looky-loos who would be interested in, ooh, what's going on over there? I don't know how much incidental people we ended up shuffling Ronald's way over at the booth. I'd like to think it was a good amount, but it was a lot. It was kind of noisy. Definitely prefer a regular game shop, but it wasn't like the end all be all. Like when you're in a match, I mean, like the outside world ceases to exist. It's just you and your opponent, even though there's games going on either side of you. But it was cool. I mean, everyone brought a good energy. It was a very tough tournament. Tons of people went 3-4. Tons of people went 4-3. I saw a lot of variety. There were a ton of different decks all across the board. I mean, if you look at the top eight, even there's tons of variety. There was a headless horseman in there. There was a Moriarty in reserve. There was so much wacky stuff. And then of course the double shift. Ricky brought the thunder with the 10-0 Witch Wukong nastiness, but he, in addition, added a third shift character. He had Watson up front and then Carson in the back. And like we were just discussing, he had Baker Street, and he was only getting the only Baker Street cards he had was the Watson 6. I don't think he even had the Watson Peak. I could be wrong, but he had the Watson 6 and then Carson's, discard 2 with Baker Street, and then the passive +2 venture per battle, which was really nice. So I mean, 10-0, you can't fault the guy. It's pretty insane. Double shift is where it's at. And yeah, as far as like counters to that, I think that it's been so dominant in 3 of the 4 tournaments that it kind of blows my mind that we don't see more frontline Jane or Van Helsing, or I mean, we see a reasonable amount of Minas and Mummies who can kind of deal with it, with the offensive negates, and Sherlock we see a bit of, but we don't see a ton of Van Helsing Jane who can just wipe away and destroy those cards even if they're placed. Also, another thing I've been thinking about is the big venture decks, seeing guys like Three Musketeers and Tarzan and John Carter. I mean, even Zorro and Leo are kind of up there, but guys who have like multiple sevens or multiple eights or a 7 and an 8. Because if you can get to, you get like 14, 15 damage on a couple of different characters if you were to like spread your hits out. It doesn't really matter where the hits are shifted to because they're all going to be KO shots. Alternatively, you could do, which I've seen like Dave mess around with, you do like Robin Hood and Victory and Sherlock, or some combination thereof, where you just have like a ton of spectrum hits and you just try and land one or two regular colors, and then you're suddenly throwing all these multis. A little vulnerable to Reaper, but if you're just like drown everybody in either really big hits or all of the colors, I think that is a potential way to counter it that's not the KL style specials. But yeah, that's for that. As far as my deck, I thought I brought something real spicy, and I guess I was a couple of variant things away from going 6-0, of course, or 6-1 or whatever. Obviously matchups would have changed had things been different, but I played Adam, who had a really interesting deck. He ended up taking second overall. He brought an energy deck. He had Morgan and Mummy, and he had Raw in the back. I'm trying to remember who his other character was. I think it was Witch.
A Wicked Witch.
Yep. And so
Yeah.
he had a little bit of shift action. I mean, the Witch is nasty in and of herself. He has the Mummy, who kind of is like this, has a pseudo taunt, like you kind of have to attack him, at least with your power cards. And then for Raw, he had just the Eye of Sekhmet, which Morgan can throw from the front with her 3. And then, of course, the staff, the shards, the giving +2. So he had a power pack plan, and a lot of these decks that performed really well had a really good power pack plan. I noticed that so many of the games at PAX, me, my buddies, all the guys we rolled with, all the games I watched, I swear, it might be an exaggeration, but it was like 70 to 80% of the games went to power pack, which is just unreal. That's not something that's super common that I've seen before, but they were just slugfests that went back and forth. So the guys who brought like Joan with EFL or Spartan Training Ground as the base, or a Raw staff, or Moriarty with his mathematical genius, both of them, the last two being reserve. They just had like an incredible plan for the power pack, and they had a huge inherent advantage against their opponent. So my game with Adam could have gone the other way. I had 4 or 5 hits stacked up on his Mummy. He was one shot away from being KO'd, and I had a very offensive heavy hand, and I had a 5 multi in my hand, and I was running Spartan. I had Sheriff, Mina, Zorro, and then Lancelot in the back. And I had the event where you could pop up your reserve to the front, so I'd occasionally surprise people and get the Lancelot 10, as like a one-shot type of deal. So his Mummy's painted up. He's like one hit from being KO'd, and I just made a very brash decision. I had seen his Cataclysm. I had seen a whole bunch of his stuff, and so I'm pretty sure his shift was also gone. His Any Hero shift and Harness the Wind. So the only card in his deck that would have stopped it had I thrown it was his Freya, and I was just like, this is just one of those all-in scenarios. So I threw the 5, comboed it with a training from Spartan, and made it a 9 against the Mummy. And if it had hit, down he goes. And then I had a slight advantage at that point in the game, and I would have been up 4 characters to 3. And he hemmed and hawed about it for a while, and I was just thinking, like, there's only one card in your deck that could stop this, buddy. It's the Freya. Stop toying with me. Show it to me or don't. And then he shows me the Freya, and I'm like, ah, damn it. And then of course his next play is the Morgan full heal, and immediately cleanses like 5 hits off the money, draws a card, attacks, and again I was low on defense that hand, and that was the pivot point for that game, and I got decimated afterwards. But
Yeah. I just want to circle back because some people might not know what Adam played. So Adam had Witch, Morgan, Mummy, Raw and Reserve, and then Asclepion. And he just had such a good plan between the shift, being able to, kind of make Mummy a dumping ground for hits. And then, if you get to that late game, having Raw like throw his staff and just beat your power cards being +2 for defense. I mean, you're so far ahead in the power pack that you're just,
yep.
there's really no coming back from it, at that point in the game. And it's just, again, have a plan. What is your plan? Like, what do you want to do, and how do you execute it? And like that was such a great idea. I mean, he's been kind of tuning that deck in the online league for probably since about during the summer. I mean, since the league started, I think I've seen him play some type of progressive variant, to kind of where he's at now. Talking about Sean's deck. You kind of mentioned other decks that have like a good end game. So Sean playing Moriarty in the back, and then being able to what is that name? I'm just thinking of with great power.
Yep, the Spider-Man one.
Yeah, the Spider-Man version of it, where you can basically, if you're in the power pack, you're going to have your 8 every time, or you can have a second 8. In
Yep.
theory, you can use one and then go grab the second one with it. Like just having these plans, like, and I think that's cool to see in this evolution of the meta, that people are still like, yeah, the combat stuff is there, the shift is there. I mean, combat wasn't even really here in this one. I think Nor was playing some type of combat style deck.
Yeah, I saw plenty of Leonidases and Zoros, but they did not perform as well as they have in the past.
And it just goes to show you that, you can have a good idea, you can prepare for something, and, have a plan, and really, you don't have to fall back to Zorro and Leonidas. And just, I think it's easy to take, say, like Phil Miller's winning deck and just be like, yeah, this is good. Like, this is solid. It kind of does everything. You don't have to necessarily do that. I mean, like, I'm looking at Ricky's list. Like, one of the things you mentioned, that he didn't play Watson's peak card. You're right. The only card that he could have had with Watson or Baker Street would have done anything is the all chips on the table, where it's,
Yep.
if successful, both players reveal, and, by virtue of Baker Street, you get to take a card. But, like, looking at his deck, it's every specials. He treated every special as a 1 per deck.
Hmm.
He used Heimdall as his Cataclysm, and then pretty much 3, 6, 7, and 8s.
And they were weighted towards Wukong.
Yeah, yeah. It's combat. I mean, which is a 7 energy, 7 any power, 8 any power, and a 6 any power.
Yep. And Carson can use all those except the 8. I think that was part of his plan, is like seeing the deck afterwards. I think you kind of have to smoke Wukong like ASAP. And he's, of course, the hardest one because he has the self protection, the heal, and he's got all 3 of his frontline characters can shift stuff. So his plan was like, Watson, I only run a couple of specials. He's annoying because he gets the persistent venture boost the whole game, but I'm going to shift cards to him and then draw. Or I'm going to shift cards to him and let him die if I've seen 1 or 2 of his specials, because who cares? And if some people have the strategy of like, oh, I'm got to kill the witch before Harness the Wind comes down. He had a plan for that too. Like, he doesn't even have that many power cards or specials that only she could use. So okay, fine, she could die too. As long as Wukong was the like full engine tent pole of that deck, and of course he's the hardest to kill. So he stacked his deck in a way that was phenomenal.
Yeah, if you can somehow manage to take out Wukong, I mean, he's got 5 specials, but then the power cards,
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about, you've got the 2 8s and the 7, so there's effectively 8 cards only usable by Wukong. So that's pretty huge if you can get it. Actually, and there's a teamwork. There's an 8. He just went
Yep.
full. I mean, there's no difference
Yep.
between using the 8 and the 7 here. So, even more. But like you said, he's just so hard to take out.
Right.
Like, yeah, this was a sweet list, and looking at how he built the deck, I think really shows you that the card advantage you can generate by having as few dupes as possible.
Yep.
There are no dupes. There's no possibility to dupe in his deck other than with a power card.
Right. I think that's part of why Witch Wukong is so nasty. It's not just the double shift. It's also you get a 7 and 8 multi, a 6 and 11, and all of their there's no dupes, like you said. Like, it's just incredibly consistent, and we see that with the 10 and 0.
And the power pack is so bad and wonky looking, it pushes you into doing this, which kind of may benefit you. Like, you may not do it otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, hats off to him. I mean, to go 10 and 0, and the inclusion of Carson in the back, I like. I mean, you have, a turn where you can take 2 for 1 them, and then another with, a potential Reaper Stopper or whatever that you can kind of shift a hit to and blank something like a premier defensive card that, can sit on the battlefield. that's great. I mean, I think this is a cool, fresh approach. I don't think we've really seen Carson, in these shift decks. I mean, she backs up the witch, or Carson backs up the witch in terms of the power grid a little bit. But I think this is great. This is a cool deck. And then we talked about Adam's deck a little bit. I want to talk about Sean's deck. I mean, I thought this was cool. So he had Moriarty in reserve, a land that time forgot, and then his front line was Sherlock, Joan of Arc, and then Jane Porter
Yep.
to make it work. I mean, you played against this deck. Like, what did you think?
I thought it was phenomenal. First, he has Jane, who is so underrated in the front line because even though she's a max 6 and has just trash stats, the avoid and discard is just incredible. And it makes you want to leave her alone the whole game. She has that KL style special that does so much. It dissolves Hera, it heals Thunderbolts, it gets rid of placed shift stuff or active shift stuff. It does so much. So her as the such a cheap character is bringing so much already. And then she is the female paired with Joan. So that's actually what got me, was because he had this crazy event and he was playing the Tarzan missions, and he had two events in his decks. He had brute force icons don't count to venture, which was good, and he said won him plenty of hands. And then he also had the character with the highest threat is -2 to defense for the battle. And that one was what messed me up because he had EFL out and I should have conceded. And I had a 5 and I was like, I can defend, or I had Zoro's repost and I'm running Spartan. So I'm like, I can defend up to a 9, even though Zoro's painted up. And then he threw a 6 any power teamwork from Jane, which comes across as an 8 because of EFL. And Zoro is a -2 to defense because he's my highest threat. So, whoop, down he goes. It's over. Yeah, even people think that you can like kind of cheese out with Hades. Hades is still a concede, so he still gets to chuck a power card at you. Um, Joan is just incredible. She brings so much heat. He almost wants Sherlock to die, or rather, doesn't really care if he dies. He's just kind of there for the negate and then the speed of the 4 multi and the spectrum pressure. Because as soon as Sherlock's down, Moriarty comes up. He has an even better grid, and he's got Mathematical Genius, which he then begins to start cycling. So both of his events were set up really nasty, almost legacy style, where they were actually both very impactful. And again, love Jane up front. Jones a powerhouse offense and defense and power pack plan. So he had like multiple redundant power pack plans. He had the Mathematical Genius and EFL in case one of them got negated. So phenomenal deck. I think he's going to bring it again to nationals because we know Sean has like 18 decks and plays all of them, but he said nothing has performed on that level. And I mean, I don't blame him. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's such a cool list. Like, it looks like it's got so much aggression to it in a way that we haven't seen. Like, if you concede, you're probably getting an 8 thrown at you, or at a minimum a 7, right? So, like, if you're conceding, you're already stuck in a bad spot. And yeah, I like it. It's got the negates from Sherlock that can, deal with the shift cards too. I mean, so you have a little bit of defense there. I mean, it kind of lacks in the like the numerical defense. You don't have a lot of, say, Grim Reaper protection or big hit protection. But a deck like this, you're going to be the aggressor, so you're probably going to take a couple hits, but you're going to deal out more damage than you're taking, and I think that's kind of the point.
Right. Very much Sean's style, brawler style. Let's trade a character because it's going to be worse for you than me.
I believe Nor was the 4th place finisher in the event, right? Is that correct?
I think so. I believe he was. I don't remember his list though.
I don't. I don't
Sorry,
have it in front of me either. Yeah, sorry, Nor.
I'm going to bet money it was Combat. I'm curious if he used Tarzan or 3 Musk. I think maybe he did use Tarzan, or was that the last tournament?
I know he used 3 Musketeers in the last one.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He used Tarzan. If you want to hear more about his deck, I believe Marcel talked about it on his cast on
Yes, he did.
his last episode. Sorry, Nor.
Yeah, sorry, Nora, our bad. I should have written that one down beforehand because I remember us even chatting about it before. Yeah.
I mean, now that we've kind of run through it and seen some new things, like what are some ideas you have to kind of fight this meta or tackle some of these decks. Like I expect all of these. Like I expect Adam to be on this energy style deck. I expect to see this shift deck either out of Ricky or Thomas. Nor will probably play some kind of aggressive style deck, either with Three Musketeers or some kind of combat based deck. I would think. I mean, what are your thoughts on how should people attack kind of these decks and the decks we've seen in the meta?
I mean, honestly, I don't think one specific style would defeat all of these. I think they're just so vastly different and they bring so much that, yeah, I really don't know. I'm cooking up something a little weird. It's definitely a little bit more venture heavy than just Spectrum because I usually hyper focus on the Spectrum, but I'm starting to see the upside to big venture stuff and also flex characters. Um, we see her pop up every once in a while, and people don't like talk about her a ton. But like Adam brought Morgan Le Fay. She is such an amazing frontline character. People see, oh, she only has the 3 and then the 4 for Venture. Like, okay, yeah, that's fair, but she could throw a teammate special card. She could throw someone from reserve or a KO'd teammate special. She's got the duality, which is instant card advantage and really good card advantage. Or you could just like force a Merlin negate discard, even if it's on the home base. Like, opponent discard a card, and then if it's not negated, draw one, and you keep it even if it's a duplicate is insane. And then the negates, and then the full heal. Like, she has such an amazing kit, and if you draw the pieces in the right, at the right time, like they're almost always going to give you value. And I think that's the name of the game with Overpower is being able to just like flex to the situations. Like you said earlier, having a plan of what your deck is trying to do is excellent. But at this point, we've also seen so many repetitive things like you do have to have a plan, not just for the power pack, but you got to have a plan to deal with the shift stuff. You got to have a plan to how are you going to kill Wukong, right? Like, how are you going to, I mean, I don't know if you necessarily can plan to like deal with Adam's deck or Sean's deck. I don't know if we're going to see like a ton of copycats or versions of those, but you do like it is good to know like I throw all my power cards at the mummy and I got to make my opponent use his shift stuff to get value out of the teammate avoid and draw. Don't throw my Grim Reaper at King Arthur because he's got the teammate avoid, stuff like that. I really think that big venture is the name of the game, and I see that a lot with the Ohio crew. They gravitate to a lot of the really tough, powerful combat characters. Like using 3 ofs for the power cards at least, and characters with big, powerful attack specials that are just big numbers. Big numbers, good. You know what I mean? I tend to go like another thing Doug said in his article, which I'll touch on real quick, is like how to when you play test games, you shouldn't just goof around and just be like, oh, I bet 5 because it's a silly game, right? Like pretend like it's an actual tournament game. Like you can even set a timer, make decisions that you think that you would make like in the moment if you were actually, like playing a tournament game and it was something high stakes. And so for when it comes to like my personal deck building, I build a lot of fun decks that have 3 of copies for all the like really good stuff. And then I notice when I go to competitive, I cut and I usually go to 2x. I hardly ever run 3 of anything. And that's just for the consistency piece because yes, this card's amazing. And I think some people are conditioned because they see like Phil Keffer or Phil Miller or some of these like top tier players that just instantly include the 3x of like the Hercules 7 or like a Zoro Riposte or even 8 and 7 power cards. And like when you get those, you just have to acknowledge like I'm putting this extra power in exchange for less consistency and makes it a little bit more of a home run or strikeout deck. So think these things through when you're making your build. I personally like sticking to 2 max of even like the really good stuff because it just gives you that extra edge of consistency and not duping on it all the time. And you can leave it placed for, a hand or two. Being flexible and overpower is everything. There's so many times where you're like, okay, I'm going to build this deck. I'm going to use my 7 every hand, or I'm going to use my 8 every hand. And that's a great plan. But what happens when your opponent concedes 1 hand and then you concede the next hand? And all of a sudden you're playing 3 hands with the same placed cards, right? And you can end up getting a little bit wrecked in that way. So
Yeah, I think, one of the things to kind of acknowledge, especially if you're coming in, is the fastest way to lose an overpower is to dupe out. So, like we were just talking about with Ricky's deck, he generated card advantage, potentially, pseudo card advantage, by putting himself in a situation where he is less likely to dupe out. So if you have dupes, he's generated that card advantage because his odds of duping are significantly lower. So, something to think about when you're kind of building decks and approaching it in that way. Yeah, there you lose some consistency, like you do. That's just like a reality, like you said. But there's a trade off to it. Using two and it kind of goes back to, I think we talked about this in the last cast. You're really keeping mental track of what you've played and what you have left. Like, okay, this is hand one. Do I place this card? Do I place this card that I have two of? Like you said, I could get to two more hands before I use it. Do I want to? How certain am I, or how willing am I to wager that this other copy is in the bottom half of my deck? If it's in the top half, I lose, right? Like, it's just a dupe. And then they know, you're down a card or whatever. So, things to think about. And if you just don't want to play that numbers game, just doing a lot of one-ofs is a way to do it. And I think looking at, Ricky's deck and kind of all of these across the top 8, I mean, they're looking for characters with game-breaking, impactful cards. Sunwoo and Wicked Witch have shifts. Moriarty and Raw served, late game purposes. So like these kind of game-altering cards, like EFL is another example of that. So, both of those decks played two of them. I guess in Adam's case, he also played two between Wicked Witch's Shift and Raw's Staff, and just kind of think about like what cards change the very nature of the game. When I play it, like the game becomes about this thing, and those are all examples of cards that do that. And to kind of look through those cards, and I think you're right in the Columbus crew. It's like I'm just gonna like throw huge numbers. I mean, you see Nor and Jessica playing Three Musketeers. And they just generate more adventure than anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing with Zorro and Leonidas. And then you just, have whoever, depending on who your two main characters are using to make up the adventure. Use Billy and someone or whatever. Those are kind of different plans that you can take. Yeah, I've been kind of kicking an idea around. I'll probably sleeve this up and take a couple spin games with it in the online league. And I want to try Leonidas, King Arthur, Sherlock, and then probably Watson in reserve. I mean, my kind of thinking is, okay, Leonidas can defend himself. He has a team of Void. He brings heat, with his 8s. King Arthur has a little team. He kind of does a little bit of everything. He has some team defense. He's got a 9. His 7 can get rid of cards, like EFL, like the shifts. So you at least have something there. Sherlock, he brings another 8. He's got, 2 negates for some of those same cards that you kind of want with Arthur. Give you a little protection from Reaper. And then Watson, I guess back there, I would probably play some of the peak cards just to, everyone kind of holds that Reaper to kind of snag place cards. Like, oh, if I can get like 3 place cards at the end of the battle, and we've kind of, traded some defenses, maybe you use it. Or, I think one of the things I've found in trying to play Watson's peak card a little more is really paying attention. Once I started paying attention to how many cards I think are left usable by a character, like if they played a lot of specials, or if it's a 6 character and I know they've think they may have a 7 or 8 that's not usable, I can go after that 6 to try and get the any characters. If they have 4 cards left, maybe a power card and a special aren't playable by them, but maybe I can find that Grim Reaper or that Freya or something that are the only cards usable by that kind of 6 character, as a way to make it more valuable. I mean, I think, one of the things I've learned is eventually, like in the past, I found it trading for kind of their worst card in the hand And I kind of like, well, maybe I should change my approach and how I play this card, and kind of really, thinking about what I'm looking for and who may have it and how to increase my odds of think who may be the best route that can play that card in that moment so I can get it. So like say a reserve character is up, right? And I'm trying to see if they have a Grim Reaper. Well, if I go after their reserve character with it, I know they have less specials, so like you're cutting out some number of cards in their hand, um, and kind of, I don't know, give Watson something. This is kind of an idea in my head.
No, I like this team a lot.
Want to try. Yeah, I don't know if it'll be good, but I mean that's kind of the online league. It's a good place to try stuff. I mean, sometimes you get players who will, try to do that home run or strikeout in a tournament, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know. Maybe I'm onto something. Maybe I'm not. Again, we just talked about like, hey, look for these cards that are kind of game breaking that make the game all about them, and those characters have none of those. I just name characters that don't have any of those style of cards. So maybe
Well,
this is a bad idea.
I don't know. The more you're talking about it, the more you're making me want to build it. This sounds like a straight up Obi-Wan Kenobi deck. Like this is like master of the fundamentals, like has a little bit of everything. Like you have two eights and a negate, right? Like they always said in old school Legacy, that's the way to do it. You have, I'm guessing you're doing Baker, so that's three passive venture every turn, which is the most you could ramp up. You have Arthur and Watson for that. You have the peak stuff, which sounds like you're already using better than the average player. Arthur has team avoids. He has the team 4 or less protection. He's got the 9, which is really hard to block, half multi. And then he has the 7. Sherlock has an offensive negate and a defensive negate. So you have multiple answers to EFL type stuff and the shift stuff and whatever. In addition, Leo and Arthur are just a natural pair because Heavy as the Head can go back and get an 8, either to defend him or to attack with. And then you get some spectrum pressure and speed from Sherlock. So I think they're kind of almost forced to go after Leo. And I mean, that's kind of that. I mean, honestly, you might even have people targeting Arthur first. And if that's the case, you have both your 8 rankers left. So the only weakness that I'm seeing is if you go to Power Pack and you're up against, something like a Raw Staff or a Spartan Training Ground or something like that. But having 2 8s or at least one in the Power Pack is usually a significant advantage if you can take out your opponent's 1 or 2 8 rankers. So this team actually sounds very, very solid.
And that's kind of the decks I've gravitated towards in the past, where you like try to cover as many bases as possible, and it's just kind of like a solid all-around deck instead of kind of like all in on a strategy. So that's just my play style. I don't know, just trying to think of things I would play and real counters. I'm not I mean, coming from Magic, I've went into plenty of tournaments where most people could probably tell you 72 of the 75 cards I'm playing, and
Yeah.
revealing my deck for nationals potentially. Like that doesn't matter. That doesn't bother to me. Like I'm still going to sit down and I think I'm confident enough that I'm going to beat you, even if you know every card in my deck.
Yep. Plus the draw order is going to be random. And like you said, there's so much to pay attention to with your own deck, let alone tracking your opponent's stuff, that information only gets you so far.
Yeah, I mean, so that's kind of what I'm working on. And, kind of going back to Doug's, like if a lot of people are going to start testing. We've talked about this before. Sleeve up these decks and just play against them. Find, someone, and I mean, just ping Sean. Like, Sean, I want to play against your
He's
land.
down always.
Yeah, Land That Time Forgot 8 intellect deck to prepare for it. Because I could see someone else bringing that. I mean, what was it? Some of the Brazil team brought a similar deck, but using combat instead of intellect. I can't remember. Was that Felipe? I think top aided with that.
It was Diego and Diego. Yeah, Felipe. Yeah. Felipe had Land That Time Forgot in Seattle. Diego was the one who top aided in PAX.
Okay.
He had Leo and Nemo and Deja. So he had a very interesting, nasty combat deck.
Yeah, and see, like, that's an example of a solid all-around style deck that performed well. So I don't think you need kind of one of these linear style strategies, with these kind of like game defining cards. But like I'm just trying to think of like my play style and maybe some others that want to have something against everything. They don't know exactly what they're going to be, but kind of like in Magic, the adage is like, I want to be the 50-50 deck. Like I'm 50-50 against the field, and I want to try and leverage play skill
Yeah.
to get that advantage and to kind of, win.
Not have any terrible matchups.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's nothing I'm stone cold against, but there's nothing I'm, going to crush. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I'm working on, and that's, kind of the approach I talked about when I was preparing for the shootout. Just looking at the meta, thinking like, okay, how can I counter this? What can I do? And I think the disadvantage I see in it is it doesn't have a card advantage aspect, which I like. And I think both of us will agree here, card advantage is king and overpower. But
Hmm.
you can't. The interesting thing is you can't do everything, right? I mean, so that's
Yeah,
that's what I'm working on.
you could sometimes get a 2-for-1 still with like Sherlock's 5. If that lands, you throw it at the opportune time, and you still got a couple options there. Yeah. One interesting all-in strategy that I've seen, and my buddy almost got me with the other day, was a sliver away, was the Tarzan. I haven't faced a lot of Tarzan lately, and we've been testing him. I mean, and his cage match with the fairy is just unreal. If you don't have a negate or a, like even if you have a shift, but like if you don't have a way to stop the cage match from happening, and your opponent has a venture lead on you, that can just be a game-winning card all on its own. Like cage match, and then, oh, I play my fairy. Now you can't attack anyone. It's over. Good game. I mean, I think the shift does a pretty good job of slowing that down at least, because like if Harness the Wind's in play, then whoever is in the 1v1 can still shift attacks away, or even you could shift where the cage match goes to optimize it, so it's like not quite as scary. But I think if we weren't seeing the double shift meta, I think Tarzan would be even crazier. He would be a problem.
Yeah, just for kind of people that maybe newer. So you're talking about Lord of the Jungle. Only Tarzan and target character may attack, be attacked, defend, or play cards for remainder of battle. So the
Yep.
combo is you play that, and then they attack, and you fairy protection, and they just can't do anything other than sit there and defend, and you just get any point of damage, and you can bet big in that battle, and kind of make it all about that battle. I mean, you could go all in on this type of style with someone like Merlin, maybe, where you could, kind of the Viking Pyre, where you just,
Yep.
take out your whole deck except kind of the God Hand for a combo. Like, I mean, I haven't seen anyone do that, but just kind of thinking like, do I want to try that foretell the future style deck with Tarzan? I don't know. Someone might be able to make it work.
It'll be
I
John Keffer. He'll be the one.
I think that would be cool to see. I mean, Tarzan, he feels like one of those underrated characters that we haven't seen a whole lot of. I mean, I think it goes to the depth of the format. I mean, he's got multiple sevens,
Yeah.
different, like 3 different attacks. He's got a brute force 7, a combat 7, and then a 5 intellect, along with, his Lord of the Jungle. And,
Personal
if
avoid. Stop a teamwork against anyone. He has a lot.
yeah, he's got good stuff. And at 19, and he's probably the best combat 19
For
if you
sure.
have that extra point. I don't think there's another one. I think you're at
There's only six
18.
19s.
Yeah, he's the only combat 7 at 19. So if you've got that extra point and you're looking for someone in combat, the other 19s, John Carter of Mars is the only one at 6. Everyone else is, I mean, Sherlock Holmes is at 5 combat. Everyone else is, 2 or 3. But, it'd be cool to see more of Tarzan. I've never gotten anyone with his inherent, but I could see that being like one of those land that time forgot kind of situations where you forget about it and you
Hmm.
do it once and you're like, oh shit. And then,
Not gonna forget a
people,
second time. Yeah, I totally agree.
yeah, I mean, so kind of what are you looking at in terms of decks or kind of play testing? We talked about Doug's Substack article a little bit. What are you working on? I mean, you can keep whatever to yourself as needed. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like some venture stuff, a big venture. I'm trying to get the guys to play. See, like my personal play group, this is why I love the online league so much because you do get a lot of variety, but you get a lot more of like meta and slightly off meta stuff. The guys I play with and mess around with, they're like so far off meta wacky that it's like I don't know if this deck is actually
Hmm.
good or if your deck is just bad. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
so there's definitely an element of that. Like there's a lot of interesting and weird and wacky stuff, but as far as like the tournament prep, I'm really kind of looking for like consistency and that sort of thing. So the biggest, I guess, roadblock is I haven't been able to test against a bunch of shift stuff because all my guys try and make counter shift decks and stuff like that and stuff that's a little bit off the wall. So I do need to test more against shift stuff specifically, but I do have a brew I'm cooking up, and it is no Mina, surprisingly. I know I bring Mina every time, but there will be no Mina this time. And the deck is 15 and 0 right now. So I'm sure some people in the Discord have seen me play it. I played it all last month. It's going to be retired from online until, nationals. I'll play it against my buddies here a little bit and maybe do a card or two refinement because there is like a tiny inconsistent thing that sometimes happens, and I really want to try and mitigate that if possible. But it also is like it's kind of straight. It's like 80% straightforward, 20% combo. Like I'm not ballsy enough to do like a Merlin Tarzan like full combo just because again that consistency thing is just so important. But yeah, I think if you were to bring like something like you were suggesting, something that's pretty fair across the field, like I think that's if you're confident in your play abilities, that's definitely a good strategy to do. I really like King Arthur. I've been looking at him a lot lately. He's in a couple of decks that I mess around with. Such a versatile kit, like people like him, Morgan Le Fay, like so different, but just so versatile. And Overpower is all about being able to pivot, like things happen, things change. Being able to, like do something on a moment's notice is so clutch. Like I do think that there's a ton of I've seen a lot of like people bring stuff that don't have a negator. Like even Ricky's thing, Ricky's 10 and 0 deck has no negator. So I think like I don't know if you were to bring like we were talking about card advantage, like if you were to bring like a Count Deja deck or something that has like insane draw, like maybe even a victory deck. We've seen a little bit of her, but that draw four, keep dupes, and then that like shred all the intellect icons in your opponent's hand. She's got some wacky stuff too. So I think that card advantage is definitely something that is underutilized, and the more we see people gravitate to shift stuff and high power, high venture stuff, then all the card advantage stuff suddenly gets better as a counter to that. I mean, we see a little Deja, like we saw, Phil Miller, Diego. There's been a couple people that have used Deja to great efficiency. Kefir played Count once. I haven't seen a ton of Count, which kind of surprises me because like he's got some really nasty, wacky stuff, and that draw three is huge. But again, like you were saying earlier, you need more than just one card that can, swing a hand or swing a game. Like you need a couple of options as far as big power stuff, I think, for the consistency.
Yeah, I mean, so when you're looking at building decks, like kind of what are some of the things you think about? And we kind of talked a little bit about this, but wanted to address that as well. Like, because we're talking about putting these ideas together and kind of building around them. So I wanted to talk about some deck building tips too.
Yeah, so, well, I think Ricky did it pretty brilliantly when you have like a tentpole character you want to keep alive. If there's someone like Wukong who's really, really, really hard to take down, it's okay to have a lot of cards only usable by them. But as a general rule of thumb, like some people only play like four specials per character. I think five is fine. Or if you have a heavily defensive deck, like six is fine. It starts getting pretty greedy at six, but seven and eight is real greedy. But as far as like, you definitely want to lay all your icons out. You want to definitely check your spectrum pressure. You want to check how many like 6+ or 7+ you have for your cumulative pressure. You want your cards to be usable by more than one person if possible, especially power cards and your teamworks and allies. I personally like to go like, I think standard rule of thumb is like four teamworks, 4 allies, or 3 and 4, something like that. Very occasionally, you'll have like a 5 teamwork deck. You usually want your power cards for like defense flex options. And I find with 5 or 6 teamwork card decks, they often end up sitting place for forever, and you can't like get a ton of value out of them. But I wouldn't suggest ever running just like 1 ally, because that event where you get to like summon 3 to the front, that could just totally kind of neuter you. And they're 1 per deck 3s. Like, it's not that bad to have a 1 per deck colored 3 that is like a mini AA that can chain into something else. Like, you're almost always going to have at least 4, sometimes 5, sometimes 6 specials for your guys. So if you're mindful of your placement, and then in addition, all the any heroes, a bunch of those are offensive, actions. So like, allies really aren't that much of a hindrance. And I find that they're like the most likely to land because it's a small hit. It's like, oh, it's just a 3. I'll let that one hit because I'm not gonna waste a 6 when I don't know what else you got coming. See, I think that's kind of the fundamentals. There's definitely something to be said with like what each character is bringing. Like, there's a lot of, for the new guys that we get in and I see, they'll be like, oh, I'm just gonna throw these characters together because I think they're cool, or I like them or whatever. And like, that's totally fair. But when you're looking at your deck as a whole, like, what's your short game plan? Are you like, you should think about like, do I want to go first with this deck or do I want to go second? Am I going to try and like place out and get card advantage and then turn it around? Do I have enough defense to sustain if I'm behind against like a chain deck, like suddenly someone's playing Joan or Cthulhu and they're just going to throw like 6 attacks in a row at me? Or do I want to go first? Is this a deck where I have to close it out before the power pack because I don't have a Shards of the Staff or an early Feminist Leader or a bonus training cards or basic universes from my home base, or something like that, like, or a mathematical genius? If I have no long-term plan, that kind of means I have to win the game in the first 6 to 7 hands. Like, Hades is a thing, and I think 85% of people, maybe even more, run Hades, and that's a concede and reset. So if you're the aggressor, that buys an extra hand of time, potentially 2 if you're playing it in a hand. So that's something to be mindful of as well. Like, what is my deck trying to do overall? Am I trying to just like brute force? Am I trying to trade hits and win venture and keep all my guys alive? Does my deck, and then like look at like, does my deck fall apart if this person drops? Does my deck fall apart if a certain 2 characters drop? Like, not a ton of decks have the staying power if they have 1 or 2 characters left. But some do. Like, you can build it in a way where you can, if I've lost 2 characters and my opponent's lost 2 characters, they're going to be at way more of a disadvantage than I am. So lots of many factors and things to consider. But general rule of thumb, like, I personally like 3 to 4 allies, 3 to 4 teamworks. I run on the lean side of power cards. I think I do like 15, 16 power cards. Some people say, like, just you got to do 20 or whatever, like a find your play style. If you're doing 3 7s, 3 8s, 3 6s, that's 9. 2 5s, 2 4s, 2 3s, that's 15. And then a 2 and a 1. Some people even play a second 2 and a second 1. I've even heard talks of like a Barsoom deck where you're fetching your power cards and you can get away with like a 4th 7 or 8 or both. But like, general rule of thumb, just kind of start there and then tweak as you see fit. If you're like, oh, like, there's not enough power cards for me, I never have them as fuel for my teamwork because I always use them for defense, it's okay to throw a couple more in. You're making that trade of slightly less consistent, and you're going to occasionally, some people play 3 5s. Oh, once, 1 in 100 hands or whatever, you're going to draw all 3 5s the same hand. It's going to be pretty upsetting, but most of the time they're going to be split up and you're going to draw them across the game. And that's a net positive. So I think it's up to individual play style, but that's like general rule of thumb right there. I have seen, some crazy Zeus decks. There's always stuff that breaks this mold, like Zeus decks with 8 Thunderbolts and then his 2 other specials, and he's your only 8 ranker, so he can play, all your 8 power cards as well. And like, there's certain stuff that goes against that, but I think that's generally a good rule of thumb. I don't know if you think differently on it.
No, I think all of that was great. I mean, I think we've hopefully really given a lot of deck building advice and kind of, what are you asking each character to do?
Yes.
Kind of in my example, right? Like, I want Leonidas to bring the heat. He brings a team of void. I want Sherlock. He's got 2 ways to deal with shift cards. He brings a defense against Reaper, and he's got some spectrum pressure.
And the lockout, also the lockout, the little that people always forget, the boop, you can't attack. Oh man, that was my whole plan, is to launch attacks from this character.
And if you're playing against decks like, say you see like Three Musketeers, like that could be a pretty devastating card when you know they have so much potential venture wrapped up in a couple characters. So like I think the worst thing you can do is throw characters together because you think they're cool. Like think like what do I want this character to do and who complements. Like if one character does something, that means they are probably deficient in some other area. So what are those deficiencies, and then who complements that? Like who brings that missing kind of piece. That's like one of the things with Count. He brings card advantage, and he's got some offsuit attacks. He doesn't bring a lot of venture, and he doesn't have a lot of defense. So like if I'm going to use Count, like those are the characters that I would think about that I would want with him.
Hmm.
Like, do I want someone like a Leonidas or like a Three Musketeers that's bringing the heat, or do I want someone like maybe King Arthur that's got defense, kind of things. Just things to think about when you're building a deck. Yeah, just kind of wrapping up here. Yeah, any final thoughts on? So we kind of get ready. I mean, we know we'll kind of have some. We'll get some more content out before nationals. We got some time, and we can kind of test some ideas and kind of, I don't know, talk about them here. Wrapping up. Anything else you got before we take off?
Not really. I'm just super pumped for Nats. I'm a little bit bummed that Invincible is now August. I was hoping that was going to be the fire that ignites everything in the Q1 or end of Q1 2026, but it is what it is. We can all be patient, but yeah, I'm super pumped for Nats. It's gonna be a blast. It's gonna be a great time. Win, lose, draw, whatever. It's all for fun, and I'm excited to see the ever shifting meta and what else is going to be dominant. If there's going to be more copycats, the new versions of the shift decks that we're going to have to slog through. Just looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I think kind of my last thought, like you can take an existing idea and kind of make it your own. I think Ricky did that really well. I mean, like I said, I haven't seen Carson there. Like he kind of had an idea of what he wanted to do, and it worked well. So maybe there's room to innovate on something like Adam's deck or someone else's.
Yeah. I
So
also noticed one thing Ricky did, which was really cool. He told me that everybody expected, which obviously, when you play Gemini and you've already played Harness the Wind, that's the card you go back and get. And so he knew his opponents were thinking that. So instead, he would go back and he would get Carson's discard. So they would never see it coming the second time and shred another two cards from their hand. And I thought that was really like next level play of expectation, and they forcing them to pivot. They're like, oh man, I'm gonna have to play around Harness the Wind again. Like, nope, you're just gonna have no hand instead.
yeah, and kind of my last thought on deck building and some of this, like looking at Ricky's deck, you can see that the linchpin of his deck is Wukong, so he built it around it. So that so he asked himself, like, if I'm sitting across, who who should they go after? Who would they go after, and why? And how can I defend them? So just be asking yourself that, like, how can you protect that linchpin character, or how can you put them in a position where they have to go after a character that they don't necessarily want to. So
Mummy or Arthur.
you know,
Yep.
like Arthur's good at doing that. Watson can do that.
Yeah.
Mummy can do that. Like I don't want to throw all my power cards at Mummy, but the price of not doing so can be pretty
Yep.
devastating.
Yep.
Things to consider. But we will catch you next time, Andrew. Always a pleasure chatting with you, man. Glad things are well. I know PAX didn't go the way you wanted, but I mean, it would look like such a stacked field. I mean, that's kind of the nature of it, unfortunately.
Yep. You win or you learn, and I learned lots.
Yeah, great attitude to have, and yeah, we'll see you all next time. Take care.
Have a good one.